Welcome back. The Electoral Commission has published the first quarter political funding disclosure report for the financial year 2024-25. The report covers the period 1 April to 30 June 2024. Most notably, it's the first report since the inauguration of the 7th Parliament and Administration following the 2024 National and Provincial Elections on the 29th of May. Joining us to unpack the report is IEC Chief Electoral Officer Mamabolo. Good evening, Mr. Mamabolo. Thank you very much for joining us on The Full View. Let's start with the key changes to the Party Funding Act, or better phrased, the legislative environment under which this first quarter declaration report was compiled. Talk us through this.
Yes, indeed. The Party Funding Act has been amended, and those amendments came into effect on the 8th of May this year. The effect of the new amendments, however, had a regrettable element, which is that the upper limits, in other words, the maximum amount of money a single donor can give to a party in a financial year, have not been determined by Parliament. Similarly, the minimum threshold which triggers the disclosure requirement has equally not been determined by Parliament, because Parliament has to take a resolution on those two aspects and then provide it to the President, on whose basis, on the basis of the resolution, can then make the determinations.
But it seems that lacuna didn't stop some parties from declaring, and so they did. 200 million was cumulatively declared. Talk us through this.
That's quite impressive. And as the Commission, we wish to laud political parties that despite the lacuna in the legal framework, they saw it fit to make the declarations nonetheless. Of course, on the 31st of July, we had convened a meeting of the National Party Liaison Committee. And even at that level, there was agreement that let's use the thresholds as they previously applied so as to avoid a situation where there are no disclosures. And indeed, a whopping 200 million has been declared in the period under reporting.
A very significant amount. I suppose there's correlation between the value of those donations declared and the election season.
Oh, certainly. There is no doubt that it being a declaration that coincides with an election season, the parties, I suppose, went on overdrive to fundraise. But also you're beginning to see some South Africans realizing the need to fund multi-party democracy. Because let's face it, if we want a vibrant multi-party democracy, it has to be paid, and someone has got to carry the can for it. The fiscals can't do it completely because of the challenges that we are all affair with. So that's why you need private donors to come in to support political parties and thereby make our democracy a bit vibrant.
Now that you've touched on multi-party democracy, I'll just jump specifically to that point of the multi-party fund. There was only one specific entity that donated their Exaro 25 million. This is somewhat problematic because a number of NGOs say if we are to fortify this inclusivity where a number of parties are participating in our democracy, we need more donors to actually be donating to that specific fund, not individual political parties. What more can be done here to ensure that there's greater talk around the need to donate to this multi-party fund, which will equally disperse the funds?
Yes, indeed. First of all, let's take the opportunity to laud Exaro for the 25 million. It's a very exemplary conduct on their part. We want other corporates really to follow their example because Multi-Party Democracy Fund really fosters multi-partyism much more than direct donations do. Because with direct donations, you give to a single party of your choice, whereas with the multi-party contribution, everybody gets a piece of the pie, so to speak, and we want to encourage corporates. I think there's a need to market the fund a bit more. There's a need as well to engage with the revenue authorities of the Republic so that benefit can also accrue to those who make contributions to the Multi-Party Democracy Fund by way of tax breaks.
And then to the number of parties that declared and the figures thereof. Please talk us through these.
Well, we see that the Democratic Alliance gets the most, or rather made the most declaration at 55 million, followed by the Inkatha Freedom Party at 38. And then in the first place, I think, comes the ANC at 26 million. Others, Action SA, around 12 million or so. So there are, of course, because these are direct donations, there are massive disparities in the quantum that goes to the various political parties. Again, that brings into sharp focus the need for a multi-party democracy fund that tries to have an equitable, as well as a proportional distribution to those parties represented in the Legislative Assembly.
What are the trends that you've noted there with the donors? Where most of the first-time donors, or in instance, are you seeing that most of the donors are donating to the newer parties, or a great amount of the money was still going to the older parties?
It's a hodgepodge of those elements. There are established donors who are very consistent with who they fund, but also we begin to see a trend of the newer players getting a piece of the pie from other donors. So you have a phenomenon of established donors directly donating to parties that are established, that they've historically donated to. And then secondly, you see donors who are keen to fund the newer players in the system. And thirdly, you have a category of donors who make donations across a number of political parties. So they don't just make one contribution, rather one donation to a party. They make a donation to Party A, the same value to Party B, perhaps the same value to Party 3. So again, that's also a phenomenon that is at play in this quarter.
A very important report. I'm sure a number of analysts will be looking at those figures, trying to assess where exactly our democracy is right now. But Mr. Mamabolo, as always, thank you very much for joining us on The Full View. That's IEC Chief Electoral Officer, Mamabolo.